Welcome to a complete journey through the world of the Walking Dead. This is the story of humanity's fall and struggle for survival in a world overtaken by the undead. From the moment Rick Grimes opened his eyes in that hospital bed to the communities rising from the ashes of civilization, this is the entire timeline, told in careful detail. Settle in, relax, and let this story wash over you as we explore every moment of this epic saga. The beginning. Days Gone By. Our story begins with Deputy Sheriff Rick Grimes of King County, Georgia. It's an ordinary day in an ordinary town, the kind of day that happens 1,000 times over in small communities across America. Rick and his partner, Shane Walsh, are discussing life, relationships, and the complexities of marriage while sitting in their patrol car. Rick talks about his wife Lori and their son Carl, sharing the mundane troubles of everyday married life. These are the last moments of the old world, though neither man knows it yet. The peace is shattered by a high-speed chase. Rick and Shane pursue a vehicle, setting up a roadblock with spike strips. What seems like a routine stop turns deadly. Gunfire erupts. In the chaos, Rick is shot. The bullet strikes him in the chest, and he falls. Shane rushes to his side, calling for help, but Rick's world fades to black. He doesn't know that this moment, this injury that nearly kills him, will save his life in ways he cannot imagine. Rick is rushed to Harrison Memorial Hospital in King County. He undergoes surgery and slips into a coma. Days pass, then weeks. The doctors tend to him, the machines keep him breathing, and Shane visits when he can, bringing flowers, talking to his unconscious friend about the world outside. But something is happening beyond those hospital walls, something terrible and unstoppable. The outbreak begins quietly at first, reports of a strange illness, people dying and coming back, attacking others. The news speaks of riots, of the military being deployed, of safe zones being established. The world watches in horror as city after city falls. The government attempts quarantines, but the infection spreads too quickly. It's in the air, in the water, perhaps in everyone already. When you die, you come back. It doesn't matter how you die. Everyone is infected. As society collapses, the hospital staff begins to evacuate. They barricade doors, try to move patients, but there are too many. Resources dwindle. Power becomes intermittent. Shane visits Rick one final time. The hospital is being overrun. Shane can hear the dead shuffling through the hallways, moaning, searching for flesh. He stands at Rick's bedside, torn between loyalty to his friend and the desperate need to survive. Shane checks Rick's heartbeat, hears nothing in the chaos, and makes the impossible decision. He pushes a hospital bed against Rick's door, barricading him inside, hoping against hope that his friend might somehow be protected. Then Shane leaves, joining Lori and Carl, fleeing toward what they hope will be safety. Days turn to weeks, turn to months. Rick lies in that hospital bed, unaware of the hell that has consumed the world. The power dies. Emergency generators sputter and fail. The hospital becomes a tomb, filled with the shuffling dead, corpses in hospital gowns wandering the halls, searching for prey that no longer exists. But Rick's room remains sealed, and somehow, impossibly, he survives. Awakening to a new world. When Rick finally opens his eyes, he awakens to silence. The machines are dead. The room is dark. He's weak, disoriented, confused. He calls out, but no one answers. He tries to move and finds he can barely stand. How long has he been unconscious? Days? Weeks? The calendar on the wall hasn't been changed in what looks like months. Everything is covered in dust. Rick pulls the IV from his arm and stumbles to the door. It won't open. Something is blocking it from the outside. He pushes harder, manages to create a gap, and squeezes through into the hallway. The sight that greets him is incomprehensible. The hospital is destroyed. Bullet holes mark the walls. Dried blood stains the floors. Bodies lie everywhere, some still, some moving with an unnatural, jerking motion. And the smell, the overwhelming stench of death and decay, hits him like a physical blow. He stumbles through the corridors, past dead nurses and doctors, past rooms with doors marked with painted warnings. "Don't open, dead inside," one says. He makes his way to the cafeteria, finds the doors chained shut from the outside, and peers through the windows. Inside, dozens of corpses claw at the glass, their faces gray and lifeless, their eyes milky white. They see him and become frantic, pushing against the doors, moaning with an inhuman hunger. Rick flees, his bare feet slapping against the cold linoleum. He finds a stairwell and climbs, driven by instinct to find fresh air, to escape this nightmare. He emerges onto the hospital roof and stops. The world spreads out before him, and it's wrong. Everything is wrong. The city is silent. No traffic sounds, no sirens, no signs of life. In the distance, he can see smoke rising from buildings. Military helicopters sit abandoned on distant rooftops. The parking lot below is filled with covered bodies, row upon row of them, and military vehicles sit empty and silent. Rick descends from the hospital, moving like a ghost through a dead world. He's still in his hospital gown, weak from months in a coma, trying to process what he's seeing. In the parking lot, he encounters his first walker up close. A woman, or what was once a woman, crawls across the ground, her lower body missing, leaving a trail of dried gore behind her. She reaches for Rick with skeletal fingers, her jaw working silently, trying to bite. He recoils in horror and runs. He makes his way through the streets of King County, heading toward home. Everything is abandoned. Cars sit in the middle of roads. Storefronts are smashed. Papers blow through empty streets. It's like everyone simply vanished. Rick's house comes into view, and he breaks into a run. "Lori! Carl!" he calls out, his voice echoing in the emptiness. But the house is empty. No note, no sign of where they went. He checks every room, growing more desperate. In Carl's room, toys are scattered as if his son left in a hurry. Photos sit on dressers, reminders of a life that seems to have ended. Rick collapses on the front lawn, overwhelmed. He's alone in a dead world, his family gone, and he has no idea what happened or where to begin looking for them. Then a shovel strikes him in the back of the head, and everything goes black again. Morgan and Dwayne Rick wakes in a child's bedroom, his hands tied. Standing over him is a man holding a gun, and beside him a boy of perhaps 10 years old. The man is Morgan Jones, and the boy is his son Dwayne. They've been surviving in this neighborhood, scavenging what they can, hiding from the dead. Morgan is cautious, uncertain whether Rick is infected, whether he's dangerous. But as Rick speaks, as he explains about the coma, about waking up to this nightmare, Morgan begins to believe him. That night, Morgan explains what happened. He tells Rick about the outbreak, how the dead came back, how society collapsed in a matter of weeks. He explains that everyone who dies comes back as one of them, as walkers, as the dead. It doesn't matter how you die. A bite will kill you with fever and infection, but even if you die of old age or an accident, you come back. The only way to stop them is to destroy the brain. They sit in the dark house, keeping the lights off to avoid attracting attention. Morgan shows Rick his wife, or what used to be his wife. She's out there, in the street, shuffling past the house every night. She was bitten in the early days. Morgan couldn't do what needed to be done. He couldn't destroy her brain, couldn't end her. So she wanders, and every night she comes to their door trying to get in, as if some part of her remembers home. Dwayne watches from the window, and Morgan fights back tears. In the morning, they go into town. Morgan and Rick need supplies. They head to the King County Sheriff's Department, where Rick used to work. It's abandoned, but intact. They find weapons, ammunition, riot gear. Rick showers for the first time in months, scrubbing away the hospital smell, the weakness, the confusion. He puts on his sheriff's uniform, straps on his gun belt, and for the first time since waking, he begins to look like himself again. Morgan has heard reports, rumors from before the emergency broadcasts stopped. He tells Rick about a refugee center in Atlanta, a safe zone protected by the military. If Lori and Carl went anywhere, they would have gone there. Rick decides to go to Atlanta. He has to find his family. He has to know if they're alive. Before leaving, Rick and Morgan return to the neighborhood one last time. Rick gives Morgan a rifle and radios, telling him to check in every morning at dawn. Maybe they'll find each other again. Maybe they'll build something better. Morgan promises to try, to work up the courage to finally put his wife to rest, to protect his son, to survive. Rick takes a police cruiser and begins the journey to Atlanta. He has a horse, King County's sole remaining mount, when the cruiser runs out of gas on the outskirts of the city. He rides through abandoned suburbs, past crashed cars and empty houses, toward the towering skyscrapers in the distance. He passes a gas station where a man has spray-painted a message: God forgives even walkers. He passes an elementary school, its playground empty and silent. Atlanta. As Rick approaches Atlanta on horseback, he hears something he hasn't heard since waking up: a helicopter. It flies overhead, and Rick's heart leaps. Military, safety. He urges the horse forward, following the helicopter into the city. He rides down the empty highway, past hundreds of abandoned vehicles, past refugee camps that have been overrun, past military checkpoints that failed to hold. He reaches downtown Atlanta and rides into the city streets. The horse's hooves echo off the buildings. Rick calls out, hoping someone will answer. The streets appear empty. Then he hears it. A moan. Another. A shuffling sound. Rick turns the horse around and sees them. Walkers, hundreds of them, filling the street behind him. They've been drawn by the sound of the horse, by Rick's shouting. They converge from every direction, shuffling, reaching, moaning with hunger. The horse panics. Rick tries to control it, but there are too many walkers. They grab the horse, pull it down. Rick falls, rolls, and runs. The walkers swarm the horse, tearing into it. Rick sprints down the street, walkers following, their numbers growing. He ducks into a tank, an M1 Abrams sitting abandoned in the middle of an intersection. He crawls underneath it, but walkers follow. He climbs up, getting inside through the hatch, and seals himself inside. Inside, the tank is dark, hot, and cramped. There's a dead soldier, his pistol beside him, a bullet through his head. Rick takes the gun, checking the ammunition. The walkers surround the tank, beating on the metal, their hands and faces pressed against the viewports. Rick is trapped, no way out, running out of air. He's going to die in this metal coffin, alone in a city of the dead. Then the radio crackles to life. A voice, human, alive, speaks. "Hey, you? Dumbass. Yeah, you in the tank. Cozy in there?" Glenn and the Atlanta survivors. The voice belongs to Glenn Rhee, a young man with an uncanny ability to navigate the dead city. Glenn talks Rick through an escape plan. There's a nearby alley. If Rick moves fast, he can make it. Rick bursts from the tank, firing the pistol, and runs. Glenn guides him through the streets, around corners, up fire escapes. Walkers follow, but Glenn knows every shortcut, every escape route. They reach a building and climb inside, finally safe. Inside, Rick meets the others, Andrea and Amy, two sisters trying to survive, Morales and his family, Jackie, and T-Dog. They're a scavenging group, coming into Atlanta for supplies despite the danger. They're not happy that Rick has led walkers to their location. His gunfire has attracted every walker in the area. The building is surrounded. Among the group is a young hothead named Daryl Dixon. Merle is racist, violent, and high on drugs he's scavenged. He immediately clashes with T-Dog, hurling slurs, waving his gun around. Rick, still a cop in his heart, intervenes. When Merle threatens to shoot him, Rick disarms him with practiced efficiency and handcuffs him to a pipe on the roof. Merle screams, curses, but Rick leaves him there to cool off. The group needs to escape the city. Glenn has a plan involving covering themselves in walker guts to mask their scent, walking among the dead to reach vehicles. It's risky, disgusting, but it might work. Rick and Glenn cut apart a dead walker, spreading the gore over their clothes and skin. The smell is overwhelming, but when they walk outside, the walkers ignore them. The plan works until a rainstorm washes away the disguise. They run, barely making it to a box truck. T-Dog returns to the roof to get Merle, but in the panic, he drops the handcuff key down a drain. Merle screams at him, begging to be released, but walkers are coming. T-Dog chains the door shut and runs, leaving Merle handcuffed and trapped. It's a decision that will haunt him. The group escapes Atlanta and heads to a camp outside the city. Rick is about to learn that his family is alive, that they've been at this camp all along, and that his reunion with them will bring complications he never expected. The quarry camp. The survivors have established a camp at an old quarry outside Atlanta. It's relatively safe, with a good view of the surrounding area and a water source. There are about 30 people here, trying to create some semblance of normalcy in a world gone mad. They have tents, a campfire, and a rotation of lookouts. Most importantly, they have each other. When Rick arrives at the camp, his reunion with Lori and Carl is emotional and overwhelming. Carl runs into his father's arms crying, unable to believe he's real. Lori is shocked, tears streaming down her face. Shane watches from a distance, his expression unreadable. Shane told Lori that Rick was dead, that he checked for a pulse in the hospital and found none. Shane has been with Lori since then, comforting her, protecting her, and Carl. But there's more to it than that. Shane and Lori have been having an affair, seeking comfort in each other during the apocalypse. Rick's return complicates everything. The camp has a structure, a fragile society. Dale Horvath, an older man with a RV, serves as a lookout and moral compass. He has a hunting rifle and keeps watch from the RV's roof. Carol Pelletier is a gentle woman trapped in an abusive marriage, with Ed, who refuses to contribute and mistreats his wife. Andrea and Amy fish by the quarry, providing food. Glenn makes supply runs. People do laundry, cook meals, and try to maintain some routine. But tensions exist beneath the surface. There's debate about whether to stay or move on. Some want to head to Fort Benning, a military base that might still be operational. Others want to stay put, believing help will come. Rick's arrival, his natural leadership, creates friction with Shane, who's been the group's de facto leader. Rick organizes a group to return to Atlanta. They need supplies, but more importantly, they need to get Merle. They can't leave him handcuffed on that roof, even if he is a dangerous bigot. Rick, Glenn, T-Dog, and Daryl Dixon, Merle's younger brother, head back into the city. Daryl is furious when he learns his brother was abandoned, and he blames T-Dog and Rick. He's a skilled tracker and hunter, fierce and loyal to family above all else. They fight their way back to the roof, but when they arrive, Merle is gone. All they find is a handcuff still attached to the pipe, and Merle's severed hand. He cut off his own hand to escape, cauterized the wound, and fled. Daryl is devastated and enraged. They find a trail of blood but can't follow it far. Merle is out there somewhere, one-handed and likely dying, wandering the dead city. On the supply run, the group encounters new survivors in Atlanta, including a young man who has been bitten. They debate what to do. The bite is a death sentence. The man will die and turn. Some want to shoot him now, to spare him the suffering. Others argue for mercy, for letting him say goodbye to his group. In the end, they leave him with his friends to decide his fate. It's a harsh reminder that mercy and morality have different meanings now. While the group is in Atlanta, disaster strikes at the camp. A herd of walkers stumbles upon the quarry. They arrive at night, emerging from the woods, drawn by the campfire and the sounds of living people. The attack is swift and brutal. People are caught unprepared. Ed Pelletier is killed in his tent. Amy is bitten while sitting by the campfire, talking with her sister. She dies in Andrea's arms as the sun rises. Several others are killed before the group drives the walkers off. The survivors burn the dead, both walkers and their own people. Andrea sits with Amy's body, unwilling to let go, waiting for her to reanimate so she can say goodbye one final time. When Amy opens her eyes as a walker, Andrea shoots her. The camp is shattered. They can't stay here anymore. The quarry isn't safe. Dr. Edwin Jenner, the last scientist at the CDC, broadcasts a message that Rick's group receives. He's alone at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, still working on a cure. The group decides to take a chance and head to the CDC. Maybe there's safety there. Maybe there's hope. The CDC. The Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta is a fortress, a modern building with heavy security and blast doors. When Rick's group arrives, the place appears abandoned. The parking lot is empty. Bodies lie on the ground outside. People who came seeking refuge and were turned away or died waiting. The group is about to leave when the doors suddenly open. A man stands there, backlit, holding a rifle. Dr. Edwin Jenner, the last scientist, has seen them on the security cameras and decided to let them in. Inside, the CDC is pristine, clean, and secure. Jenner takes them to a control room filled with computers and monitors. He's been alone for months since the other scientists died or fled. He shows them what he knows about the infection. They watch a computer simulation called Test Subject 19, showing a human brain being infected. The virus shuts down the brain, killing the host. Then it reignites the brainstem, bringing the body back to life, but only the most primitive functions. There's no consciousness, no humanity, just base instinct to feed. Jenner admits he doesn't have a cure. He doesn't even understand the infection. The CDC's resources are exhausted. Communication with other facilities has been silent for weeks. For all he knows, he's the only scientist left working on this anywhere in the world. And he's about to give up. The group enjoys one night of safety. They have hot showers, real food, and wine. They sleep in beds for the first time in months. It feels like a glimpse of the old world. But the next morning they discover the truth. The CDC is running out of power. When the generators fail, the building's safety systems will activate. Full decontamination, Jenner calls it. The building will seal itself and explode, vaporizing everything inside to prevent contamination from spreading. Jenner has accepted his death. He's tired, alone, and hopeless. He wants the group to stay, to die peacefully in the explosion rather than face the horrors outside. He seals them in the control room. The countdown begins. 30 minutes until decontamination. Rick pleads with Jenner to let them go, to give them a choice. In a quiet moment, Jenner whispers something to Rick, something we don't hear. Whatever it is, it shakes Rick to his core. Jenner finally opens the doors, giving them a chance to escape. Most of the group runs. Jackie chooses to stay, preferring a quick death to the struggle outside. Andrea nearly stays too, but Dale refuses to leave without her, and she can't let him die for her. The group races through the CDC, reaching the exit just as the timer counts down. The windows are blast-proof. They can't break them. Carol reveals she has a grenade, something Rick took from the tank in Atlanta and she'd been carrying. Rick throws it at the window, shattering the glass. They pour out into the parking lot and run as the building explodes behind them, a massive fireball that mushrooms into the sky. They pile into vehicles and drive away from Atlanta for the last time. The city, the CDC, any hope of a scientific solution to the outbreak is gone. They're on their own now, a small band of survivors in a dead world, heading down the highway to nowhere in particular, just trying to stay alive one more day. The road and Herschel's farm. The group travels down Georgia's highways, a small convoy of vehicles running low on fuel, low on supplies, and low on hope. They're heading toward Fort Benning, the military installation that might still be operational, though no one truly believes it anymore. The roads are clogged with abandoned cars, creating massive traffic jams that stretch for miles. Burned-out vehicles, makeshift campsites, and thousands of scattered belongings tell the story of refugees who never made it to safety. The convoy stops at one particularly dense section of highway. They need to siphon gas, scavenge supplies. While they're working, a massive herd of walkers appears, hundreds of them shuffling down the highway. The group hides, sliding under cars, staying absolutely silent. It's the largest concentration of walkers they've seen. They move like a slow-moving river of death, moaning, shuffling, following some unknown instinct. During the herd's passing, several things go wrong. T-Dog cuts his arm on a car and bleeds heavily. The smell of blood attracts walkers, but Daryl covers him with bodies, saving his life. Sophia, Carol's young daughter, panics and runs. A few walkers follow her into the woods. Rick chases after them, kills the walkers, and hides Sophia by a creek bed, telling her to wait while he leads the remaining walkers away. When he returns, Sophia is gone. The group begins a desperate search for the little girl. Days pass. They comb the woods, call her name, leave markers and supplies. Carol is distraught. Daryl becomes the most dedicated searcher, going out alone repeatedly, tracking, following any possible trail. While searching, Daryl finds a farmhouse on a sprawling property. He's shot by a man on horseback who mistakes him for a walker. That man is Otis, and he brings Daryl back to Herschel's farm. Herschel Green is a veterinarian who owns a beautiful farm that has remained largely untouched by the apocalypse. It's isolated, peaceful, with fields of crops and a large house. Herschel lives there with his 2 daughters, Maggie and Beth, along with Otis and his wife Patricia, and a farmhand named Jimmy. They've been surviving by staying quiet, avoiding the dead, and maintaining their land. At the farm, Carl is accidentally shot. Otis was hunting deer when his bullet passed through and hit Carl, who was nearby with Rick and Shane in the woods. Carl is critically wounded, losing blood, and needs surgery. Herschel is the closest thing to a doctor they have. He operates in his living room, extracting bullet fragments. But Carl needs medical supplies, equipment that only a nearby high school being used as a FEMA shelter would have. Shane and Otis volunteer to get the supplies. They reach the school, which is overrun with walkers. They fight their way inside, get the equipment, but are trapped. Walkers surround them. There's no way both men will make it out. In a moment that reveals Shane's descent into darkness, he shoots Otis in the leg, leaving him as bait for the walkers. Otis is torn apart while Shane escapes with the supplies. Shane returns to the farm, shaves his head to hide where Otis grabbed his hair, and lies, telling everyone that Otis sacrificed himself heroically. Carl's surgery is successful. He survives. The group, exhausted and grateful for the farm's safety, asks Herschel if they can stay. Herschel reluctantly agrees, but only temporarily. He doesn't understand the truth about walkers. Herschel believes they are sick people who might be cured. In his barn, he's been keeping walkers locked up, including his wife and neighbors, waiting for a cure that will never come. The search for Sophia continues, but hope fades with each passing day. Meanwhile, relationships develop at the farm. Glenn and Maggie begin a romance, finding solace in each other. Glenn discovers the walkers in the barn and tells the others, creating a massive conflict. Rick and Herschel debate the nature of the walkers, humanity, and survival. Shane grows increasingly unstable, jealous of Rick's leadership, and still harboring feelings for Lori. He's violent, aggressive, and beginning to believe that Rick is too weak to keep the group safe. Lori discovers she's pregnant. She doesn't know if Rick or Shane is the father. The news terrifies her. Bringing a child into this world seems cruel, impossible. She considers ending the pregnancy, but ultimately can't go through with it. She tells Rick, and he accepts the child as his, though the paternity question hangs unspoken between them. The conflict over the barn comes to a head. Shane, driven by rage and fear, breaks open the barn doors. Walkers shuffle out into the daylight. Shane, Rick, and the others shoot them down, methodically putting bullets in their heads. Herschel watches in horror as his wife, his friends, his neighbors are executed. But they're not people anymore. And Shane forces everyone to see that truth. The last walker emerges from the barn. It's small, dirty, wearing the remains of a child's clothing. It's Sophia. She's been in the barn all along, bitten and turned sometime after she ran into the woods. Otis found her as a walker and put her in the barn before he died, not knowing who she was. Carol collapses, screaming. The group stands in stunned silence. Finally, Rick steps forward and shoots Sophia, ending their hope and confirming their worst fears. In this world, no one is safe, not even children. The farm under siege. The revelation that Sophia was in the barn all along shatters the group's morale. Carol withdraws, refusing to speak to anyone. Daryl isolates himself, angry at the wasted effort, angry at the world. Herschel disappears into town, drinking at a bar, trying to drown the pain of losing his family a second time. Rick and Glenn go after him, finding him drunk and broken. Herschel's reluctance to accept the new reality has made everything harder. At the bar, they encounter two strangers, Dave and Tony, who are part of a larger group. They seem friendly at first, asking about Rick's camp, about the farm, but their questions become aggressive, threatening. They want to know exactly where the farm is. Rick realizes they're dangerous, that they'll take the farm by force if they learn its location. When Dave and Tony make a move, Rick shoots them both. It's a cold, calculated decision. These are living people, not walkers, and Rick has just killed them without hesitation. The gunfire attracts more walkers and also Dave and Tony's group. Rick, Glenn, and Herschel are pinned down in the bar. A firefight erupts. They escape through the back, but one of the other group's members is impaled on a fence. The young man, Randall, is injured and screaming. Rick decides to save him, bringing him back to the farm as a prisoner. Randall becomes a problem. He's seen the farm. He's mentioned that his group has 30 men heavily armed. If they let Randall go, he might lead them back. If they keep him prisoner indefinitely, they're no better than captors. The group debates killing him, execution for a crime he hasn't committed yet. Dale pleads for mercy, arguing that they can't lose their humanity. But Shane convinces most of the group that Randall is too dangerous to live. Rick is supposed to execute Randall, taking him into the woods to do it quietly. But he can't. Randall is just a scared kid. Rick brings him back alive, creating another rift with Shane. Shane has had enough. He's convinced Rick is going to get them all killed with his weakness, his morality, his refusal to make the hard choices. Shane releases Randall as a ploy to lure Rick into the woods alone. Shane plans to kill Rick, to take over leadership, to protect Lori and Carl in the way he believes is necessary. They struggle in the woods, and Shane pulls a gun. Rick, seeing no other choice, stabs Shane in the heart with a knife. Shane dies in Rick's arms, and Rick is devastated. Shane was his best friend, his brother. But Shane comes back. Even without a bite, Shane reanimates as a walker. This confirms what Dr. Jenner whispered to Rick at the CDC. Everyone is infected. When you die, you come back. It doesn't matter how you die. Carl appears in the woods, having followed his father. He sees Walker Shane reaching for Rick and shoots Shane in the head, saving his father but losing his innocence in the process. The gunshot from Carl's pistol echoes across the countryside, and it has unintended consequences. A massive herd of walkers has been wandering nearby, drawn by the sounds of the earlier firefights. The gunshot gives them a direction. They converge on Herschel's farm. The farm is overrun in a matter of hours. Hundreds of walkers shuffle across the fields, overwhelming the defenses. The group fights desperately, but there are too many. Rick tries to organize a defense, but it's hopeless. Andrea is separated from the group, left behind when the vehicles flee. Buildings burn, people scatter. The farm, their safe haven, falls. The survivors regroup on the highway where they lost Sophia. They're in shock, traumatized, and divided. They've lost people in the chaos. Andrea is missing, presumed dead. Rick finally reveals the truth that Jenner told him. Everyone is infected. When you die, you come back. There's no cure, no hope of escaping this fate. You can avoid walker bites, you can survive. But when your time comes from any cause, you will become one of them. The group is furious that Rick kept this secret. They question his leadership. Rick, pushed to his breaking point, makes a declaration. This is no longer a democracy. If they want to stay, they follow him. If not, they can leave. The group reluctantly stays, but trust is shattered. They spot a prison in the distance, a large, fortified structure. It might be defensible. It might be safe. They head toward it as winter begins to settle over Georgia. The prison. The West Georgia Correctional Facility looms like a fortress, surrounded by double fences topped with razor wire. The courtyard between the fences is packed with walkers, dozens of them in prison jumpsuits and guard uniforms. But inside those walls is shelter, security, and the possibility of a real home for the first time since the outbreak. The group clears the outer courtyard over several days. They work methodically, killing walkers at the fence line, creating noise to draw them out, eliminating them one by one. Daryl, Glenn, Maggie, Rick, and T-Dog take the lead while others keep watch. They're exhausted, hungry, and running out of supplies, but the promise of safety drives them forward. They finally secure the outer yard and move into the prison itself. The cell blocks are dark, silent, and filled with walkers. They clear them room by room, hallway by hallway, using riot gear from the prison armory. In the chaos, Herschel is bitten on the leg. Rick makes a split-second decision and amputates Herschel's leg with an axe, hoping to stop the infection from spreading. Herschel survives, losing his leg but keeping his life. While securing the prison, they discover they're not alone. A group of surviving prisoners has been locked in the cafeteria since the outbreak began, unaware of how much the world has changed. The prisoners are Thomas, Andrew, Axel, and Oscar. They're hardened criminals, and immediately there's tension. Rick doesn't trust them. He offers a deal. They'll help clear another cell block for the prisoners, but then they stay separate. While clearing the new cell block, Tomas becomes violent and unstable. He tries to kill Rick, and Rick responds by killing him with a machete to the head. Andrew flees, and Rick locks him in a yard filled with walkers, leaving him for dead. Axel and Oscar remain, and Rick grudgingly allows them to stay with the group, though watched closely. Meanwhile, Andrea survived the farm's fall. She spent the winter wandering, sick and exhausted, until she was saved by Michonne, a mysterious woman with a katana sword and two armless, jawless walkers chained to her like pets. Michonne is a skilled fighter, quiet and intense. Together, they've survived the winter. Michonne and Andrea discover Woodbury, a small town that's been fortified and transformed into a functioning community. It has walls, electricity, gardens, and nearly 80 residents living in relative safety. It seems like a miracle, a glimpse of civilization. They're welcomed by the town's leader, a charismatic man who calls himself the governor. The governor, whose real name is Philip Blake, presents himself as a fair, thoughtful leader. He gives Andrea and Michonne shelter, food, and medical attention. Woodbury has a doctor, Dr. Stevens, and resources they haven't seen since before the outbreak. But Michonne is suspicious. The town is too perfect, too controlled. She notices armed guards, secret meetings, and an undercurrent of fear. Andrea, desperate for safety and community, wants to believe in Woodbury. She begins a romantic relationship with the governor, seeing him as a strong leader trying to protect his people. But Michonne sees through him. She discovers the governor's secret. He keeps a room full of heads preserved in aquarium tanks, trophies from people he's killed. He also keeps his undead daughter, Penny, chained in a hidden room, unable to let her go. Michonne decides to leave Woodbury, and Andrea chooses to stay. They part ways bitterly. Michonne heads out alone but encounters Glenn and Maggie on a supply run from the prison. She leads them back toward the prison, but they're ambushed by Daryl Dixon, who has become the governor's right-hand man after Woodbury found him wandering and treated his severed hand. Merle takes Glenn and Maggie prisoner, bringing them to Woodbury. The governor interrogates Glenn and Maggie brutally. He wants to know about their camp, about their numbers, about their resources. Glenn is beaten savagely. Maggie is threatened with sexual assault. They eventually reveal the prison's location, and the governor begins planning an attack. Rick, Daryl, Michonne, and Oscar launch a rescue mission to Woodbury. They infiltrate the town, create chaos with smoke grenades and gunfire, and rescue Glenn and Maggie. During the escape, Oscar is killed and Daryl is captured. Rick has a brief confrontation with the governor, but doesn't kill him, a decision he'll come to regret. The governor, using Daryl's capture, stages a brutal entertainment spectacle for Woodbury. He forces Daryl to fight Merle in a makeshift gladiator arena, claiming they're spies. But before the fight can end in death, Rick and Maggie attack from outside the walls, creating enough chaos for Daryl and Merle to escape. The reunited Dixon brothers flee into the night, heading back to the prison with Rick's group. The governor's true nature is fully revealed. He's a psychopath who maintains control through fear, manipulation, and violence. He orders his militia to assault the prison, wanting to take it for Woodbury. His first attack is brutal but unsuccessful. Rick's group, knowing the prison's layout, defends effectively. The governor's men are forced to retreat. War with Woodbury. The conflict between the prison and Woodbury escalates into full-scale war. The governor makes a second assault, this time with more men and a plan. His militia breaks through the outer defenses, pouring into the prison courtyard. Rick's group falls back to the inner cell blocks, fighting desperately. Axel is shot and killed by one of the governor's snipers. Herschel is taken hostage briefly, but escapes in the chaos. The governor's forces reach the cell blocks, but the prison's interior becomes a deadly maze. Rick's group knows every corner, every ambush point. They use the darkness, the narrow corridors, and their desperation to fight back. Maggie, Glenn, Michonne, and Carl all prove to be fierce fighters. Even Herschel, one-legged and using crutches, picks up a rifle and defends his family. But something unexpected happens. The governor's militia breaks. His men are not soldiers. They're people from Woodbury forced to fight, scared and uncertain. When they encounter serious resistance, many turn and flee. The governor, enraged by their cowardice, loses control. In one of the series' most shocking moments, He opens fire on his own fleeing men, massacring them on the road. Only a handful of his most loyal soldiers survive. Rick's group has won the battle, but at enormous cost. The prison is damaged, their ammunition is low, and they've lost people. More importantly, they know the governor is still out there, wounded and more dangerous than ever. Woodbury itself begins to fall apart. Andrea, who stayed behind when Michonne left, discovers the truth about the governor. She tries to escape to warn the prison but is captured by the governor. The governor keeps Andrea imprisoned, showing his complete descent into madness. Milton, Woodbury's scientist, and one of the few truly good people in the town, helps Andrea escape. But the governor discovers Milton's betrayal and fatally stabs him. Worse, the governor leaves Milton to die in the room with Andrea, knowing Milton will reanimate and attack her. Milton does turn, and though Andrea fights him off and kills him, she's bitten in the neck during the struggle. Rick and the others finally storm Woodbury, expecting a fight, but they find the town mostly abandoned. The governor has fled with his remaining loyalists. They discover Andrea in her prison, dying from the walker bite. She says her goodbyes to Michonne and Rick, reflecting on her journey, her choices, and her hope that they can build something better. Andrea takes her own life rather than turn, and the group buries her outside the town. Rick makes a decision that shows his growth as a leader. He invites the innocent people of Woodbury, the children, elderly, and those who are just trying to survive, to come live at the prison. The prison can hold them all, and together they can be stronger. It's an act of mercy and hope in a world that offers little of either. The Woodbury survivors join Rick's group, nearly doubling their numbers and bringing new skills, supplies, and a sense of community. The prison becomes a true settlement. They establish gardens, reinforce defenses, create living spaces. For a time, there's peace. Carl grows up fast, becoming harder, more comfortable with killing walkers and even people if necessary. Rick tries to step back from leadership, wanting to be a father first, and establishes a council to make decisions democratically. But the governor is still out there, surviving in the wilderness with his last 2 loyal soldiers. He's broken, destroyed, but not finished, and he's not the only threat. In this world, the dead aren't the only monsters. Sometimes the living are worse. The flu and new threats. Life at the prison settles into a routine. The council, made up of Rick, Daryl, Herschel, Glenn, Carol, and Sasha, makes decisions for the community. They've established systems for farming, security, education for the children, and supply runs. It almost feels normal, like they're rebuilding society in their own small way. But then people start getting sick. It begins with coughing, fever, and weakness. Patrick, a young man from Woodbury, dies in the night from what seems like the flu. But he reanimates inside the cell block, wandering the dark corridors and attacking people in their sleep. The outbreak spreads quickly in the close quarters of the prison. People are dying not from walker bites, but from disease, and then coming back as walkers. Rick and the council realize they're facing a deadly flu strain, possibly swine flu or something similar, that's mutating in the close quarters. They quarantine the sick, isolating them in a separate cell block. But the situation deteriorates rapidly. More people fall ill. The prison's makeshift infirmary becomes overwhelmed. Herschel, despite the risk to himself, enters the quarantine zone to care for the sick. using medical knowledge and herbal remedies to keep people alive. Glenn falls seriously ill, coughing blood, barely able to breathe. Maggie is desperate to get to him, but is kept away to prevent infection. Sasha, Tyrese's sister, also becomes critically ill. The community needs antibiotics and medical supplies desperately, or everyone in quarantine will die. Daryl, Michonne, Bob Stuckey, and Tyrese volunteer for a dangerous supply run to a veterinary college 50 miles away. The trip is perilous. They encounter massive walker herds, losing their vehicle and fighting through the dead to reach the college. At the college, they find limited supplies but enough antibiotics to help. They fight their way back, barely making it alive. Meanwhile, a new threat emerges at the prison. Someone is feeding rats to the walkers at the fences, attracting them, making the herds larger and more dangerous. Sections of fence begin to collapse under the weight of hundreds of walkers. The community is forced to shore up defenses constantly. Then Carol makes a horrifying decision. To stop the flu from spreading, she drags two sick people, Karen and David, out of their cells and burns them alive. She believes it's necessary, that killing the infected will save the rest. Rick discovers what Carol did and is forced to banish her from the prison. It's a heartbreaking decision. Carol has been with them from the beginning, but she killed innocent people who were sick. Rick can't allow that, no matter the justification. Carol leaves alone, taking a car and supplies, heading out into the world. The antibiotics arrive just in time to save Glenn, Sasha, and others. The quarantine zone is cleaned, bodies are burned, and the flu crisis passes. But the prison has lost more people, and the walker herds at the fences are growing dangerously large. They need to deal with the walkers permanently, to clear them away before the fences fail completely. The group begins a systematic clearing operation, killing walkers at the fence, burning bodies, and reinforcing weak points. It's exhausting, dangerous work. Herschel is nearly killed when a section of fence gives way, but he's saved by Rick and others. They're making progress, but it's slow, and everyone knows they're vulnerable. The governor has been watching. He's found a new group, more survivors desperate for leadership. He's told them a version of events where Rick's people are the villains, and he's shown them the prison as a target. The governor has a plan for revenge, and this time he won't fail. The fall of the prison. The prison has never been more vulnerable. The fences are weak, the community is recovering from the flu, and supplies are low. Rick is trying to negotiate with the governor, who has returned with the militia and a captured Herschel and Michonne as hostages. The governor has brought an actual tank, military weapons, and more than 30 armed people. He demands that Rick's group abandon the prison within an hour or everyone dies. Rick stands at the fence, pleading with the governor for peace. He offers to share the prison, to let both groups live there together. It's the culmination of Rick's character growth, trying to find a peaceful solution, believing that they don't have to kill the living to survive. But the governor has no interest in peace. He's here for revenge, for blood. To prove his seriousness, the governor raises Michonne's katana and swings it down on Herschel's neck. The blade doesn't cut all the way through on the first stroke. Herschel falls, bleeding, gasping, and the governor strikes again and again, killing him in front of his daughters. Maggie and Beth scream. The prison erupts in gunfire. The battle for the prison is brutal and chaotic. The governor's people storm through the broken fences. The tank smashes through the outer walls, crushing walkers and driving into the courtyard. Rick's people fight back from the cell blocks, from guard towers, from cover. Bullets fly in every direction. People die on both sides. Children hide in the prison buses, terrified. Rick and the governor engage in a vicious hand-to-hand fight. They're trying to kill each other, two leaders who represent different philosophies of survival. Rick, bloodied and beaten, is nearly killed. But Michonne appears, running the governor through with her katana, saving Rick's life and avenging Herschel. But the prison is falling. Walkers are pouring through the breached walls in massive numbers. The governor's assault has destroyed the defenses, and now the dead are claiming the prison. The tank continues to fire, collapsing buildings. Smoke and fire spread. People scatter, fleeing in different directions, the community shattered in moments. The governor, mortally wounded by Michonne, lies on the ground as his last two loyal soldiers turn on him. Lily, a woman he manipulated and used, shoots him in the head, ending his reign of terror. But it's too late to save the prison. Rick's people evacuate in small groups, taking different vehicles, different directions. The community is torn apart. Families are separated. The prison, their home for nearly a year, is lost. Rick and Carl escape together, both wounded, believing everyone else is dead. They find a quiet neighborhood and hole up in a house where Rick collapses from his injuries. Carl, still a child despite everything, is forced to defend his unconscious father from walkers. He's terrified, angry, and almost loses Rick several times. When Rick finally wakes, Carl has changed. He's harder, colder, believing he can survive alone. Other groups scatter across Georgia. Glenn, sick and weak from the flu, escapes on a bus with other survivors but collapses. Maggie, Sasha, and Bob find him and rescue him, fighting through walkers to reach a terminus marked by signs along railroad tracks. The signs promise sanctuary for all at a place called Terminus. Tyrese escapes with Judith, Rick's infant daughter, along with Lizzie and Mika, two young sisters. They're woefully unprepared for survival, and Tyrese is forced to carry the baby while fending off walkers. They're saved by Carol, who has been watching over the prison from afar despite her banishment. She rejoins them, helping keep the children alive. Daryl finds himself with Beth Green, Herschel's younger daughter. They bond over their shared loss, finding solace in each other's company. Beth teaches Daryl hope, showing him that despite everything, beauty still exists in the world. They find moonshine in a country club, play golf in walker-infested grounds, and burn down a cabin in a symbolic release of their pain. Michonne nearly loses herself, choosing to wander alone with a new pair of chained walkers as camouflage. But she encounters Rick and Carl, and the sight of them, alive and together, brings her back from the brink. The three reunite, forming a small family unit, and they too see signs for Terminus. Terminus and New Beginnings. The signs for Terminus line the railroad tracks throughout Georgia, promising sanctuary for all, community for all, those who arrive survive. For the scattered survivors of the prison, these signs represent hope, a chance to reunite, a place to rebuild. One by one, the different groups follow the tracks toward Terminus. Tyrese and Carol's group encounters a major problem with Lizzie, one of the young girls they're protecting. Lizzie has become psychologically damaged, unable to distinguish between walkers and people. She believes walkers are just different, that they can be friends. This delusion reaches a horrifying climax when Lizzie kills her younger sister Mika, believing Mika will come back as a walker and they can all be friends. Carol finds Mika's body with Lizzie standing over it, bloody knife in hand, and baby Judith in danger. Carol is forced to make an impossible decision. Lizzie is too dangerous to keep alive, too damaged to reason with. In one of the series' most heartbreaking scenes, Carol takes Lizzie out to a field, tells her to look at the flowers like they used to, and shoots her. It's a mercy killing, but it destroys Carol. Tyrese discovers that Carol killed Karen and David at the prison, and Carol offers him her gun, telling him to do what he thinks is right. But Tyrese forgives her, understanding that everyone has had to do terrible things to survive. Daryl and Beth are captured by strangers. Beth is taken to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, a function-in hospital run by a group of Atlanta police officers led by Officer Dawn Lerner. The hospital operates on a twisted system. They rescue people, but those rescued owe them service until they repay their debt. It's slavery with a veneer of civilization. Beth is trapped there, unable to escape, working as an orderly while Dawn maintains control through violence and manipulation. Daryl escapes and encounters a group of violent survivors called the Claimers. They operate on a brutal code. If you see something you want, you call claimed, and it's yours. They're hunting Rick for killing one of their members in the house where Rick and Carl had stayed. Daryl travels with them, biding his time, looking for a chance to find Beth. Rick, Carl, and Michonne arrive at Terminus first. The place looks idyllic. Clean buildings, gardens, people cooking food over grills. A woman named Mary welcomes them, offering them a plate of food. But something is wrong. As they walk through Terminus, Rick notices familiar objects. Glenn's riot gear from the prison, Maggie's poncho, Daryl's poncho. These aren't abandoned things. They were taken from people who came to Terminus. Rick confronts the Terminus people, and the truth is revealed. Terminus is a trap. The people here are cannibals, luring survivors with promises of sanctuary, then butchering and eating them. Rick, Carl, and Michonne are captured and herded into a railroad car at gunpoint. Inside the car, they find Glenn, Maggie, Abraham, Eugene, Rosita, Bob, Sasha, and others from the prison. They've all been captured. But Rick isn't defeated. As they sit in the dark railroad car, surrounded by their people, Rick makes a promise that becomes one of the series' most iconic lines. They're screwing with the wrong people. They're going to escape, they're going to end Terminus, and they're going to survive. Because that's what they do. Escaping Terminus and the road to D.C. Rick has a plan. Before being captured, he buried weapons near the Terminus fence. If they can escape the train car and reach those weapons, they have a chance. The opportunity comes when Terminus brings Rick, Daryl, Glenn, and Bob to a slaughter room. It's a nightmare. A trough where people are forced to kneel before being killed with a baseball bat and butchered like animals. They're going to be food. But Carol, who has been traveling separately with Tyrese and Judith, arrives at Terminus and sees what it really is. She launches a one-woman assault on the compound. She covers herself in walker guts, walks among a herd outside the fences, and fires a rocket into a propane tank. The explosion rips through Terminus, breaching the fences and allowing walkers to pour in by the hundreds. In the chaos of the explosion and walker attack, Rick's group fights back. They kill their captors in the slaughter room and fight their way through Terminus. They free everyone from the train car. Terminus burns as walkers overrun it, and the cannibals flee or die. Rick's group massacres any Terminus survivors they encounter, showing no mercy to people who would have eaten them. They escape into the woods, and Rick is reunited with Judith. He thought she died at the prison, but Carol saved her. The reunion is emotional and powerful. Carol, despite her earlier banishment, has saved them all. Rick tells her she can never leave again. She's family. Among the survivors from Terminus are 3 new faces: Abraham Ford, a military-looking man with a distinctive red mullet; Rosita Espinosa, a tough survivor; and Eugene Porter, a scientist. Eugene claims to know what caused the outbreak and says he was part of the Human Genome Project. He needs to get to Washington, D.C., to deliver crucial information that could end the plague. Abraham and Rosita are escorting him there, and they've been trying to recruit others to help protect Eugene on the journey. Rick is skeptical of Eugene's claims, but the promise of a cure, of ending this nightmare, is too important to ignore. More importantly, his group needs a purpose, a destination. They've been running, surviving day to day, but they need hope. Washington, D.C. becomes that hope. Before leaving, Gareth, the leader of Terminus who survived the assault, begins hunting Rick's group. Gareth and the remaining cannibals are tracking them, wanting revenge and food. They attack the church where Rick's group has taken shelter, but Rick turns the tables. In a brutal, methodical execution, Rick and his people kill Gareth and all his followers, beating them to death in the church. It's savage, necessary, and marks a turning point in Rick's willingness to use extreme violence to protect his family. The group begins a long journey to Washington, splitting into 2 groups to cover more ground and gather supplies. Along the way, they encounter Father Gabriel Stokes, a priest who has been hiding in his church since the outbreak began. Gabriel is weak, inexperienced with violence, and harboring guilt over locking his congregation out of the church during the early days, listening to them die outside while he remained safe inside. Bob, who was bitten during the Terminus escape, succumbs to the infection. Before he dies, it's revealed that Gareth and his cannibals had already eaten part of Bob's leg, and Bob takes pleasure in telling them they ate tainted meat. Bob dies among friends, and Sasha is devastated by the loss of another person she loved. The journey to D.C. is grueling. The group faces walker herds, hostile survivors, and diminishing supplies. Abraham becomes obsessed with reaching Washington, pushing the group hard, believing Eugene's mission is humanity's last hope. But Eugene has been growing increasingly anxious, and finally, on a dusty road in Georgia, he confesses the truth. He lied. He's not a scientist. He wasn't part of any Human Genome Project. He doesn't know what caused the outbreak, and he has no cure. He made up the story to convince people to protect him, to give himself value in this new world. Abraham, devastated and enraged, beats Eugene unconscious. The group's purpose, their hope, was based on a lie. They're stranded in the middle of Georgia with no destination, no plan, and no reason to keep going. But they don't turn back. they continue toward Washington anyway because they have nothing else. Nowhere else to go. Grady Memorial Hospital. While Rick's group deals with the fallout of Eugene's lie and continues toward Washington, another story unfolds in Atlanta. Beth, who was taken from Daryl weeks earlier, is trapped in Grady Memorial Hospital, a facility run by a group of Atlanta Police Department officers led by Dawn Lerner. Dawn presents herself as someone trying to maintain order and civilization, but she's created a twisted system. The hospital rescues people from the streets, then forces them to work off their debt. Since the hospital decides how much each rescue cost and how much each person's work is worth, no one ever repays their debt. They're slaves, kept in line through violence and the threat of being thrown out into walker-infested Atlanta. Beth is forced to work as an orderly, caring for patients and doing menial labor. She witnesses the corruption and cruelty of Dawn's system. One officer, Gorman, repeatedly sexually harasses Beth and other wards. Another patient, Noah, is a young man desperate to escape and return to his family in Virginia. Beth and Noah attempt to escape together, but only Noah makes it out. Beth is caught and punished, but she's not broken. Daryl discovers Beth is in the hospital when his group encounters Noah in the woods. Noah tells them about Grady, and Daryl organizes a rescue mission. The plan is careful and tactical. Kidnap some of Dawn's officers and negotiate a trade. Rick, Daryl, Tyrese, Sasha, and Noah execute the plan, capturing officers and forcing Dawn to the negotiating table. The exchange takes place in a hospital hallway, tense and dangerous. Dawn agrees to trade Beth and another patient, Carol, who was injured and brought to Grady, for her officers. The trade happens, and it seems like everyone will walk away peacefully. But Dawn demands Noah come back, claiming he still owes a debt. Beth refuses to let Noah be taken back into slavery. In a moment of defiance, Beth stabs Dawn with a pair of surgical scissors. Dawn reflexively pulls her gun and shoots Beth in the head. Beth dies instantly. Daryl, devastated and enraged, immediately shoots Dawn. The hospital erupts in tense standoff, but Dawn's officers, tired of her leadership, stand down. They offer to let Rick's people stay, but Rick's group takes Beth's body and leaves. Maggie, who has been traveling with Glenn and others and just learned Beth was alive, arrives just in time to see Daryl carrying her sister's body out of the hospital. Maggie collapses in grief. Beth, the kind soul who believed in hope and beauty even in the apocalypse, is gone. The journey to Alexandria. Burdened by grief and loss, Rick's group continues north. They're exhausted, starving, and dehydrated. They've been on the road for weeks, living off scraps, barely surviving. A brutal stretch of highway nearly kills them. They're down to their last drops of water when, miraculously, they find water bottles left in the road with a note. From a friend. They're suspicious. Everything is a trap in this world, but they're too thirsty to care. Before they drink, rain begins to fall, a torrential downpour that saves their lives. They collect water, drink deeply, and take shelter in a barn. That night, a massive herd of walkers passes by, and the group has to hold the barn doors closed against them. They barely survive, working together in the dark, every person pushing against the doors as hundreds of undead hands claw from the other side. In the morning, they meet Aaron, a recruiter from a community called Alexandria Safe Zone. Aaron has been following them, leaving the water, evaluating them. He invites them to his community, a walled neighborhood outside Washington, D.C., that has survived the outbreak intact. The group is deeply suspicious. Every time they've trusted promises of sanctuary, it's been a trap. But Aaron seems genuine. He shows them pictures of Alexandria, gives them food, and allows himself to be restrained while Rick scouts the location. Alexandria is real. It's a pre-planned community with walls, solar power, running water, and houses. Real houses with beds, showers, and kitchens. It's been protected since the outbreak began, and the residents are families who happened to live there when the world ended. They've been safe, isolated, living almost normal lives while Rick's group has been fighting for survival in the wasteland. Deanna Monroe, a former congresswoman, leads Alexandria. She interviews each of Rick's group on camera, trying to understand them, to see if they'll fit into the community. She offers them houses, jobs, and a chance to be part of something stable. But Rick's group doesn't trust it. The walls seem strong enough, but the people are soft, unprepared for the reality of the world outside. They don't understand what it takes to survive. Rick's people struggle to adapt. The houses feel like traps. The walls feel temporary. They sleep on floors instead of beds because beds are too soft, too vulnerable. They keep their weapons close despite being asked to turn them in. They don't trust the Alexandrians, and the Alexandrians don't understand why these newcomers are so hard, so violent, so paranoid. Conflicts arise immediately. Rick is made a constable, essentially a police officer for the community, working with Michonne. But the previous constable, Deanna's son, Aiden, is incompetent and dangerous. On a supply run, Aiden's recklessness gets him killed, and he nearly takes Glenn and Noah with him. Noah dies horrifically, torn apart by walkers while Glenn watches helplessly, unable to save him. The Alexandrians have been doing things wrong, taking unnecessary risks, and Rick's group has to teach them how to truly survive. But the Alexandrians resist, seeing Rick's people as savages, as dangerous. Tension builds between the two groups, different philosophies of survival clashing within the walls. Rick becomes attracted to Jessie Anderson, a married woman whose husband, Pete, is abusive. Rick sees himself as Jessie's protector, but it's more than that. He's attracted to her, wants her, and is willing to use violence to get rid of Pete. His judgment becomes clouded. One night, drunk and aggressive, Rick gets into a fight with Pete that spills into the streets. Rick pulls his gun on the gathered Alexandrians, ranting about how they don't understand the world, how they need to change or they'll die. Michonne, Rick's friend and fellow constable, knocks Rick unconscious to stop him from doing something irreversible. It's a moment that shows how close Rick has come to losing himself, to becoming a tyrant. He's brought before Deanna for judgment. Will he be exiled, executed? Wolves and tragedy. While Alexandria deals with internal conflicts, an external threat emerges. The wolves. They're a brutal group that marks their foreheads with W's, believes humans are meant to return to an animal state, and kills without mercy. They've been attacking communities, slaughtering everyone, and leaving trails of dismembered bodies as warnings. Morgan, Rick's friend from the very beginning, reappears after being absent for years. He's changed dramatically. He's mastered a non-lethal fighting style using a staff, and he's adopted a philosophy of valuing all life, refusing to kill even in self-defense. Morgan arrives at Alexandria just as Rick is spiraling, and his presence begins to ground Rick, reminding him of who he was, who he could be. But tragedy strikes during Rick's judgment. Pete, drunk and armed with Michonne's katana, attacks the meeting. Reg, Deanna's husband, tries to stop him and is killed, his throat slashed. Pete's violence forces the issue. Rick executes Pete with a gunshot to the head while Pete's son watches. It's justice, but it's brutal, and it changes Alexandria. Deanna realizes Rick was right about the dangers outside. She gives him and his group real authority to train the Alexandrians, to fortify the walls, to prepare for war. But it might be too late. The wolves launch an assault on Alexandria while many of the experienced fighters are outside on a supply run. The attack is savage. The wolves breach the walls using trucks, pouring into the community with machetes and axes, killing anyone they find. They're not trying to take Alexandria. They're trying to destroy it. Morgan, despite his non-lethal philosophy, is forced to fight, using his staff to disable attackers without killing them. Carol, however, shows no mercy. She disguises herself as one of the wolves and methodically hunts them through Alexandria, killing them efficiently and brutally. The attack is repelled, but Alexandria has suffered significant casualties. The walls are damaged. Worse, during the attack, the noise has attracted a massive herd of walkers that was being led away from Alexandria by Rick, Daryl, and others. The plan to redirect the herd fails catastrophically, and now thousands of walkers are converging on Alexandria. The herd and Glenn's fate. Rick, Daryl, Michonne, Glenn, and others have been leading a herd of thousands of walkers away from Alexandria using vehicles and noise. It's the largest herd anyone has seen, a river of undead stretching for miles. The plan is delicate. Keep the herd moving in one direction, lead them away from all communities, and disperse them in an unpopulated area. But when the wolves attack Alexandria, the horn from a truck stuck in the wall begins blaring, drawing the herd directly toward the community. The plan collapses. The group tries desperately to redirect the herd, but it's fracturing, with streams of walkers breaking off in different directions. They're forced to split up, each person trying to lead sections of the herd away. Glenn and Nicholas find themselves trapped in a town, surrounded by walkers in an alley. They climb onto a dumpster, but there's no escape. Walkers surround them, pressing close, reaching up. Nicholas, overcome with fear and guilt over past cowardice, shoots himself in the head. His body falls onto Glenn, and both tumble into the herd. The camera shows walkers tearing into bodies, blood and guts everywhere. It appears Glenn has died, torn apart by the herd. For several episodes, Glenn's fate is unknown, leaving viewers and characters believing he's dead. Maggie is devastated. The group mourns. But, in a controversial twist, it's revealed that the walkers were eating Nicholas's body, which had fallen on top of Glenn. Glenn survived by crawling under the dumpster and waiting hours for the herd to pass. While Glenn survives, Alexandria faces its own crisis. The herd arrives at the walls, thousands of walkers pressing against the barriers, beginning to push them down. The community is trapped, unable to fight so many, unable to flee. Spencer, Deanna's son, attempts to climb over the herd on a rope to escape and get help, but he falls and nearly dies. Rick has to fight through the herd to save him, barely making it back inside. The walls begin to fail. walkers pour into Alexandria. The survivors are forced to retreat to their houses, barricading themselves inside. Deanna is bitten while defending the others, marking her for death. She spends her last hours writing letters to her sons, reflecting on her leadership, and ultimately sacrificing herself to buy others time to escape. Rick comes up with a desperate plan. Cover themselves in walker guts and walk through the herd, moving slowly, mimicking the dead, leading the survivors to safety. It's the same plan he and Glenn used in Atlanta years ago. The group, including Carl and baby Judith, covers themselves in gore and begins the terrifying walk through thousands of walkers. It's working until Sam, a young boy traumatized by the violence, panics. He stops walking, starts crying, and draws the walkers' attention. The walkers attack Sam, tearing him apart. His mother, Jessie, holding Carl's hand, freezes in shock and won't let go. Rick is forced to cut off Jessie's hand to save Carl, but not before a walker bites her. Jessie's other son, Ron, enraged, pulls a gun on Rick. Michonne kills Ron with her katana, but not before he fires, shooting Carl in the eye. Carl collapses, severely wounded, possibly dying. Rick carries him through the herd, fighting with primal rage, refusing to let his son die. The sight of Rick fighting alone, protecting his son against impossible odds, inspires the other Alexandrians. They emerge from their houses and join the fight. Slowly, methodically, they begin killing the herd, all through the night and into the next day. The entire community fights together, and when the sun rises, the herd is destroyed. Carl survives his injury but loses his right eye. He'll wear a bandage over it for the rest of his life, a permanent reminder of this battle. Alexandria is saved, but it's been forever changed. The soft community has been baptized in blood and fire, and those who survive are no longer naive about the world. Negan and the Saviors. As Alexandria recovers from the herd, they encounter a new threat that makes everything else seem small. While on patrol, Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha encounter a group of men on motorcycles. These men demand all their possessions, claiming everything belongs to someone named Negan. When Daryl kills them in self-defense, they unknowingly declare war on the largest, most organized group of survivors they've ever encountered. The Saviors are a vast organization controlling multiple communities through fear and violence. They have hundreds of members, outposts across the region, and resources that dwarf anything Rick's group has seen. They operate on a simple principle. Other communities work for them, providing half of everything they produce, or the Saviors kill them. It's protection money, extortion on a massive scale, and it's kept the Saviors alive and powerful while others have struggled. Rick's group starts encountering Saviors everywhere. At first, they win these encounters. Rick, Michonne, Daryl, and others raid a Savior outpost, killing dozens in their sleep, believing they're dealing with a limited threat. They believe eliminating one outpost will solve the problem. But every Savior they kill brings them closer to meeting Negan himself. Meanwhile, Maggie is pregnant with Glenn's child. It's a moment of hope, new life in a dying world. But pregnancy in the apocalypse is dangerous, and Maggie needs medical care that Alexandria can't provide. Rick decides to take her to the Hilltop Colony, another community they've recently encountered, which has a doctor. The Hilltop is a farming community led by a weak man named Gregory. They've been paying tribute to the Saviors for months, living under Negan's thumb. When Rick's group arrives, they learn the scale of the savior operation and realize they've made a terrible mistake. They haven't been fighting a small group. They've been fighting an army. Rick's group attempts to take Maggie to Hilltop, but the saviors have set up roadblocks. Every route is blocked by armed men. Rick, Glenn, Maggie, Daryl, Michonne, Abraham, Sasha, Aaron, Eugene, and Rosita are captured and forced to their knees in the woods. It's a trap, and they're helpless. An RV door opens and Negan emerges. He's charismatic, charming even, with a dark sense of humor. He carries a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire that he calls Lucille. Negan explains the situation. Rick's people killed dozens of saviors, and that requires recompense. Someone has to die to balance the scales. Negan is going to kill one of them with Lucille, and they're going to accept it, or he'll kill them all. He plays a children's counting game. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. The camera moves through the lineup, past each terrified face. The game ends, and Negan swings Lucille down. The screen goes black. The season ends on a cliffhanger, with the audience not knowing who died. Under Negan's thumb. The identity of Negan's victim is eventually revealed in one of the series' most brutal sequences. Abraham Ford is killed first, his head bashed in by Lucille while his friends watch in horror. Abraham faces his death with defiance, his last words a final gesture of strength. But when Daryl, enraged, attacks Negan, Negan decides one death isn't enough. He needs to make his point. Negan chooses Glenn. Glenn, who has survived since Atlanta, who found love with Maggie, who was about to be a father. Negan beats Glenn to death with Lucille while Maggie watches, screaming. Glenn's skull is crushed, his eye dangles from its socket, and he tries to speak Maggie's name before dying. It's horrific, designed to break the group, to show them that resistance means death. Rick's group is utterly defeated. Negan takes Daryl as a prisoner, forcing Rick to work for him, to supply the saviors with half of everything Alexandria produces. Rick, once defiant and strong, is broken. The cost of resistance is too high. He submits to Negan's authority, and the rest of the group follows his lead. Alexandria begins life under savior rule. The saviors visit regularly, taking supplies, humiliating the residents, enforcing Negan's authority. They take weapons, medicine, food, and anything else valuable. The Alexandrians, who fought so hard to survive the herd, are now slaves in all but name. Rick counsels everyone to submit, to survive, to accept this new reality, but not everyone can accept it. Carl, Rick's son, sneaks onto a savior truck and infiltrates the sanctuary, Negan's home base. He attempts to kill Negan with an assault rifle, managing to shoot several saviors before being captured. Negan, instead of killing Carl, is intrigued by the boy's courage. He takes Carl on a tour of the sanctuary, showing him how the saviors operate, explaining his philosophy of leadership through fear and strength. The sanctuary is massive, a former factory converted into a fortress. It houses hundreds of saviors and workers. The workers, people from communities that failed to produce enough or broke savior, rules serve as slave labor. Negan's lieutenants, including a scarred man named Dwight, who had tried to escape with his wife, enforce order. Negan has multiple wives, women who volunteered to marry him in exchange for privileges and protection. It's a twisted society built on violence and coercion. Negan brings Carl home to Alexandria and waits for Rick. He makes himself comfortable in Rick's house, cooks spaghetti, plays with Judith. He's demonstrating his power. He can go anywhere, take anything, and there's nothing Rick can do about it. When Rick returns, expecting to fight, Negan has already left. It's psychological warfare, and it's working. The group is fractured. Some, like Rick, believe submission is the only way to survive. Others, like Rosita and Michonne, want to fight despite the odds. Carl's infiltration, though unsuccessful, plants a seed. Maybe Negan can be killed. Maybe they can resist. The Kingdom and Carol's journey. While Alexandria suffers under Negan, Carol and Morgan have left the community. Carol, tired of killing, exhausted by the violence she's had to commit, walks away, seeking solitude. Morgan follows her, worried for her safety. They encounter saviors on the road, and in the ensuing fight, Carol is shot. They're saved by knights on horseback, medieval knights with armor and kingdom insignia. The Kingdom is another community, led by a man named Ezekiel who styles himself as a king. He wears dreadlocks, sits on a throne, and has a pet tiger named Shiva. At first, the Kingdom seems absurd, a Renaissance fair in the apocalypse. But Ezekiel's performance is deliberate, a way to give his people hope, structure, and purpose. The medieval trappings help people believe in something larger than survival. Carol, cynical and worn down, is unimpressed. She plans to leave as soon as she recovers. But Ezekiel sees through her act, recognizes her pain, and offers her friendship. Carol finds herself drawn to him, to his kindness, to the possibility of a life beyond violence. She takes a house outside the Kingdom's walls, a place where she can be alone but not completely isolated. The Kingdom has also been paying tribute to the saviors, but they've managed to maintain relative autonomy. Ezekiel negotiates with the saviors while secretly building up his forces. He has trained fighters, weapons, and the will to resist. When Rick's people reach out for allies, the Kingdom becomes a key potential partner. Morgan, committed to his pacifist philosophy, trains a young man named Benjamin from the Kingdom. Benjamin is kind, idealistic, and believes in Morgan's way of nonviolence. Their relationship becomes a mentorship, with Morgan trying to pass on his beliefs. But the apocalypse isn't kind to idealists. During a routine tribute delivery to the saviors, a conflict arises over a missing cantaloupe. The saviors, led by a cruel man named Jared, kill Benjamin to prove a point. Morgan finds Benjamin dying, and despite his medical knowledge, can't save him. Benjamin's death breaks something in Morgan. His pacifism shatters. He tracks down and kills the savior responsible, returning to violence after so long trying to avoid it. Carol, learning about what's happening at Alexandria, realizes she can't hide from the world. She emerges from her isolation, ready to fight again. The Kingdom, Alexandria, and the Hilltop begin secret communications, planning resistance against the saviors. All-out war begins. Rick finally decides to fight. The catalyst is a visit to the Scavengers, a bizarre community living in a junkyard, led by a woman named Jadis who speaks in broken, abbreviated sentences. The Scavengers have weapons, numbers, and a willingness to fight for the right price. Rick negotiates an alliance, promising them supplies and weapons if they help defeat the saviors. The plan is ambitious. Coordinate attacks on multiple savior outposts simultaneously while defending against retaliation. Alexandria, the Hilltop, the Kingdom, and the Scavengers will attack together in overwhelming force. Rick believes that if they kill enough saviors quickly enough, the rest will surrender. He's betting everything on one massive offensive. But the scavengers betray Rick. Jadis made a deal with the Saviors, and when the attack begins, the scavengers turn their guns on Alexandria instead of the Saviors. Rick's forces are trapped between the scavengers and Negan's army. The attack fails catastrophically. Alexandria's gates are blown open, and Saviors pour in. Negan has Rick at gunpoint, ready to kill him and end the resistance. But then Shiva, Ezekiel's tiger, leaps from nowhere, attacking Saviors. The kingdom's forces have arrived, charging into battle. Carol, Ezekiel, and their fighters drive the Saviors back, saving Alexandria. Rick's people escape, but it's a temporary reprieve. The war has truly begun, and it will be long, bloody, and costly. The conflict escalates into all-out war. Battles rage across multiple communities. The sanctuary is besieged, with Rick's forces trapping hundreds of Saviors inside using walker herds. Outposts are raided, burned, destroyed. Supply lines are cut. People die on both sides, fighters and innocents alike. Casualties mount. Eric, Aaron's boyfriend, is killed in battle. Shiva sacrifices herself to save Ezekiel, dying under a swarm of walkers. The kingdom's forces are ambushed, with many killed. The Saviors retaliate by attacking the hilltop, and a devastating battle leaves both sides weakened. Carl, meanwhile, has been helping a stranger named Sadiq, whom he met in the woods. Carl brings Sadiq to Alexandria despite Rick's warnings, believing in helping people even during war. While helping Sadiq, Carl is bitten by a walker. He hides the bite, keeping it secret while participating in Alexandria's defense. Only later, during a savior attack, does Carl reveal the truth. He's dying. Rick discovers that Carl has been bitten and is devastated. Carl spent his final days writing letters to everyone he loves, trying to impart wisdom, trying to make his death mean something. He wrote to Negan, too, pleading for peace, arguing that the killing has to stop. Carl's death is slow, painful, and he faces it with courage. Rick and Michonne stay with him in the sewers beneath Alexandria, and Carl takes his own life before he can turn. Carl's death fundamentally changes Rick. His son, the person he's been fighting to protect since the beginning, is gone. And Carl died, believing in peace, believing that Rick and Negan's war was wrong. Rick is forced to reevaluate everything. The end of the war. The war continues even after Carl's death, but Rick's heart is no longer in it. He's going through the motions, fighting because he doesn't know what else to do. Negan, too, is affected by Carl's death. He respected the boy, saw potential in him, and Carl's letters to him plant doubt. The conflict reaches a climax with multiple battles. The Saviors, desperate and low on supplies, become more brutal. Negan uses tactics like coating weapons with walker guts, ensuring that even minor wounds lead to fatal infections. The hilltop is attacked with these contaminated weapons, and many residents die from sepsis. But internal divisions plague both sides. Dwight, Negan's lieutenant, has been secretly helping Rick, providing information and sabotaging savior operations. His betrayal is driven by revenge. Negan forced Dwight to watch as he took Dwight's wife Sherry as one of his own wives. When Negan discovers Dwight's treachery, he plans a trap. Eugene, who has been working for the Saviors manufacturing bullets, is forced to choose sides. He's been pragmatic, working for the Saviors because they have resources and Eugene values his own survival. But he's also been sabotaging their bullets, ensuring they'll backfire when used. It's his way of helping Rick without openly rebelling. The final battle approaches. Rick and Negan's forces converge for what both sides believe will be the decisive engagement. But before the battle, Rick proposes a meeting with Negan, claiming he wants to discuss surrender terms. Negan agrees, confident that Rick has finally broken. They meet in the open, surrounded by their armies. Rick offers Negan Carl's final letter, telling him about Carl's vision for the future, about a world where communities cooperate instead of conquering each other. Negan is moved but dismissive. He believes Rick is weak, that mercy is weakness. Then Rick attacks. In close combat, Rick slashes Negan's throat with a hidden knife. Negan falls, bleeding out. Rick's people cheer, believing the war is over. But Rick, thinking of Carl's words, thinking of what kind of world his son wanted, tells people to save Negan. They take him prisoner instead of killing him, showing mercy. This decision is controversial. Maggie, who lost Glenn to Negan's bat, is furious. She wanted Negan dead, wanted revenge. Daryl and others agree with her. Rick's decision to spare Negan creates a new division within the Allied communities. The Saviors, leaderless and defeated, surrender. The outposts are absorbed. The workers are freed. The war is over, but peace is fragile. Rick announces a new way forward. The communities will work together, will trade and communicate, will build something better than the old world. It's Carl's vision, an attempt to honor his son's memory. Negan is imprisoned in a cell in Alexandria. Rick visits him regularly, talking about the new world they're building, showing Negan that a different way is possible. Negan heals from his injury, survives in his cell, and begins a long, slow journey toward redemption or madness, depending on your perspective. Time, jump, and rebuilding time passes. 18 months after the war, the communities are rebuilding. They've established regular trade routes, communication systems, and cooperation agreements. There's a charter, a set of laws that all communities agree to follow. Infrastructure is being restored. A bridge is under construction to connect communities, making travel and trade easier. Rick has stepped back from day-to-day leadership. He's a council member, a figurehead, but other leaders have emerged. Maggie leads the hilltop, still harboring resentment toward Rick for sparing Negan. Ezekiel leads the kingdom and has married Carol, forming a power couple. Michonne is pregnant with Rick's child, and they're building a life together. But tensions remain. Maggie wants to kill Negan, believing justice hasn't been served. She conspires with Daryl and others, planning to defy Rick and execute the prisoner. The trust built during the war is fracturing as communities pursue different agendas. Meanwhile, a new threat emerges from the margins: the Whisperers. They are survivors who wear walker skin, walk among the dead, and have adopted a primitive, violent philosophy. They view other survivors as weak, as clinging to a dead civilization. The Whisperers are led by Alpha, a ruthless woman who has abandoned all humanity, and her second-in-command Beta, a massive, violent enforcer. The communities don't know about the Whisperers yet. They encounter strange evidence: walkers that seem organized, that move in patterns, that appear where they shouldn't be. Missing people, disturbing signs, but they don't understand what they're facing. Rick's focus is on the bridge construction. It's symbolic of the new world, connecting communities, representing cooperation. But the construction is plagued by problems: accidents, sabotage, and dwindling supplies. Not everyone believes in Rick's vision. Some saviors, integrated into the work crews, resent their new lives. Tensions simmer. During a walker attack at the construction site, a massive herd threatens to destroy months of work and kill dozens of people. Rick is trapped on the bridge, wounded and surrounded. To save everyone, he shoots the bridge's dynamite reserves, destroying the bridge and seemingly killing himself in the explosion. The blast sends Rick's body into the river, and no one finds it. Rick Grimes, the man who woke up in a hospital at the beginning of this story, is believed dead. But Rick survived. He's found downstream by Jadis and the scavengers, who have been secretly negotiating with another group that uses helicopters. They take Rick away, flying off to an unknown location, leaving his family and friends believing he died a hero. Life after Rick Michonne gives birth to Rick's son, RJ. The communities mourn Rick, building memorials, telling stories of his leadership. But life continues. 6 years pass and the world has changed again. Judith Grimes, Rick's daughter, is now about 10 years old. She's grown up in relative peace, training as a fighter, learning to survive. She wears a sheriff's hat like her father's and carries his revolver. Judith represents the new generation, children raised in the apocalypse who know nothing of the old world. The communities have evolved. Alexandria is thriving. The hilltop has grown. But the kingdom is failing. Its infrastructure crumbling, its population dwindling. Ezekiel and Carol's marriage has fallen apart, the stress of leadership and loss tearing them apart. Carol leaves to live on a boat, isolating herself, becoming a nomad on the water. Daryl has also isolated himself, living in the woods, searching endlessly for Rick's body, refusing to believe his friend is gone. He's become more wild, more withdrawn, communicating little with others. His loyalty to Rick's memory has become an obsession. Michonne has hardened. She's become paranoid about security, refusing to help other communities, focused entirely on protecting Alexandria and her children. Her experiences have made her distrustful, and she's pulled Alexandria away from the cooperative spirit Rick envisioned. The Whisperers finally reveal themselves. Survivors start encountering humans wearing walker skin, people who can control walker herds, who live like animals. The first major incident occurs when several young people from different communities violate boundaries and wander into Whisperer territory. They're captured by Alpha and her followers. Alpha meets with the community leaders at a border. She's terrifying, cold, logical, and utterly ruthless. She wears walker skin over her face, speaks in measured tones, and shows no recognizable humanity. She draws a border in the dirt and explains the rules. The communities can have their land, but they cannot cross into Whisperer territory. If they do, people die. To prove her seriousness, Alpha places 12 pikes in the ground at the border. On each pike is a severed head, faces of people the communities know. Among the dead is Henry, a young man from the kingdom who Carol had come to love as a son. Also killed is Tara, a longtime survivor. Enid, a young woman who'd grown up in Alexandria, is there too. The message is clear. The Whisperers will kill anyone who crosses them. The Pike incident, as it comes to be known, devastates the communities. The fragile peace they've built is shattered. They're facing an enemy unlike any before, one that can disappear into herds, that can weaponize the dead, that operates by rules no one understands. Ezekiel is broken by Henry's death. His kingdom collapses entirely. the remaining residents evacuating to the hilltop and Alexandria. Ezekiel, once a confident leader, becomes depressed, suicidal, his royal persona completely abandoned. Carol, despite leaving him, returns to help, but she's changed too. She wants revenge on Alpha, wants to kill her for murdering Henry. The communities prepare for war again, but this time it's different. The Whisperers don't have fixed locations, don't operate by conventional rules. They're nomadic, moving with herds impossible to pin down. And their leader, Alpha, is somehow able to control massive herds, directing thousands of walkers like weapons. The Whisperer War. The conflict with the Whisperers is unlike any previous fight. It's not about territory or resources, it's about survival philosophies. The Whisperers believe civilization is dead, that pretending otherwise is foolish. They've embraced a primal existence, living like animals, speaking in whispers to avoid attracting walkers, wearing walker skin to move among them safely. Lydia, Alpha's teenage daughter, is caught between worlds. She was born before the outbreak, remembers a normal childhood briefly, but has been raised by the Whisperers. She escapes her mother and seeks refuge with the communities. Her defection enrages Alpha, who views Lydia as weak for choosing civilization over survival. Daryl forms a bond with Lydia, seeing in her a person trapped by circumstances, trying to find her own way. He protects her despite others' suspicions. Lydia provides intelligence about Whisperer tactics, locations, and capabilities. But she's also struggling with Stockholm Syndrome, sometimes defending her mother's brutal choices. Negan, imprisoned for years, offers to help fight the Whisperers. He's been watching the world change from his cell, talking with visitors, slowly working on personal redemption. Some, like Michonne, refuse to even consider releasing him. Others, like Gabriel, believe he's genuinely changed. The debate about what to do with Negan resurfaces. Carol becomes obsessed with killing Alpha. She makes reckless decisions, endangering others in her quest for revenge. Daryl tries to restrain her, but Carol is beyond reason. Her grief over Henry, combined with years of trauma, has pushed her to a breaking point. She takes unnecessary risks, and people die because of her choices. The Whisperers launch attacks using walker herds. They herd thousands of walkers toward the hilltop, overwhelming its defenses. The hilltop falls in a brutal nighttime assault. Buildings burn. Residents evacuate in chaos. Many die, trapped by walkers or killed by Whisperers. The community Rick's group worked so hard to build is destroyed. The survivors flee to different locations. Some go to Alexandria, others to Oceanside, a coastal community of women who've been living in isolation. The Whisperers have succeeded in destroying the hilltop, proving they're a threat that can't be ignored or negotiated with. Negan is released, given a chance to prove himself. He infiltrates the Whisperers, pretending to want to join them. Alpha, intrigued by his reputation and his survival skills, accepts him. Negan spends time with the Whisperers, learning their ways, gaining Alpha's trust. He becomes her confidant, her potential successor. But Negan's loyalty remains with the communities. In a private moment, he gets Alpha alone and kills her, slashing her throat. He brings her head back to Carol, presenting it as a gift, as proof of his redemption. Carol, who has wanted this for so long, finds no satisfaction in it. Alpha's death doesn't bring Henry back, doesn't fix the damage Carol's actions have caused. Beta, Alpha's second in command, becomes the new leader of the Whisperers. He's even more violent, more unstable than Alpha. Beta is revealed to be a former celebrity, a country music star whose face is recognized when his mask is damaged. His identity crisis, the contrast between his old fame and his current brutality, makes him unpredictable. Beta assembles the largest herd ever seen, thousands upon thousands of walkers, and leads them toward Alexandria. It's a suicide mission in a sense. Beta knows he won't survive, but he wants to destroy everything as revenge for Alpha's death. The communities face their greatest challenge, a horde so large it could overwhelm all their defenses combined. The Tower and the Horde. With the massive herd approaching, the survivors take shelter in an abandoned hospital tower. It's defensible, high above the ground, with limited access points. Nearly everyone from all communities gathers there: Alexandria residents, former kingdom members, hilltop survivors, and others. It's crowded, tense, and supplies are limited. Tensions within the tower run high. Old conflicts resurface. Maggie has returned after being away for years, and she's furious to learn Negan was released and is being treated as a hero for killing Alpha. She tries to kill Negan multiple times, stopped only by others. The question of Negan's place in the community divides people. Meanwhile, the herd surrounds the tower. Thousands of walkers press against the building, drawn by the noise and scent of living people. The Whisperers, led by Beta, are mixed in with the horde, coordinating the assault. They're trying to breach the tower's defenses, to funnel the walkers inside. Lydia, caught between loyalty to the communities that took her in and complex feelings about her mother's death, struggles with her identity. She blames herself for the war, believing that if she had stayed with the Whisperers, none of this would have happened. Negan talks with her, sharing his own experiences with guilt and redemption, forming an unlikely bond. The siege lasts days. Supplies dwindle. People begin to starve. Children cry. The smell of the dead is overwhelming. The survivors try different tactics to thin the herd, using sound to draw them away, picking off stragglers, but nothing makes a significant dent. They're trapped, and time is running out. Beta leads a group of Whisperers inside the tower through an underground passage. They begin attacking from within, killing people, opening doors to let walkers in. The tower becomes a war zone, with fighting on multiple floors. Beta seems unstoppable, shrugging off injuries, killing with brutal efficiency. He's completely lost himself in his role, no longer a person but a monster. Daryl confronts Beta in a lengthy, brutal fight. They crash through walls, fall down stairs, stabbing and bludgeoning each other. Eventually, Daryl manages to impale Beta and push him down an elevator shaft into the walker horde below. Beta's mask is torn off, and walkers, no longer recognizing him as one of their own, tear him apart. With Beta dead, the Whisperers collapse as an organization. The few remaining members flee or are killed, but the herd is still a problem. Thousands of walkers still surround the tower, and the survivors can't stay trapped forever. They develop a plan to lead the horde away using sound systems and vehicles, mimicking the tactics used years ago. It's dangerous, requiring people to split up and expose themselves. But it works. Groups of survivors use music and noise to draw walkers in different directions, fracturing the massive herd into smaller, manageable groups. Over several days, the herd is dispersed and destroyed. The communities, exhausted but victorious, emerge from the tower. The Whisperer threat is ended, but the cost has been enormous. The hilltop is gone, the kingdom abandoned, and many people are dead. The communities that remain must rebuild yet again. New beginnings and the Commonwealth. After the Whisperer War, the survivors regroup in Alexandria. The community is overcrowded. Resources stretched thin, but they're alive. Discussions begin about the future. Some want to try to reclaim the hilltop or the kingdom. Others want to find new locations, places that haven't been touched by the recent wars. While on a mission to find supplies, Eugene's group encounters a new community unlike anything they've seen. The Commonwealth. It's massive, with tens of thousands of residents, functioning government, modern amenities, and a military. The Commonwealth has survived through organization and hierarchy, recreating the structure of the old world within their walls. Eugene, Yumiko, Ezekiel, and others are brought to the Commonwealth and processed. They're given jobs, assigned living spaces, and integrated into the community. It seems like a miracle, like finding civilization intact. But there are troubling elements: rigid class structure, corruption among leadership, and inequality that echoes the worst aspects of the old world. The Commonwealth is led by Governor Pamela Milton, a politician from before the outbreak who has maintained power through control and manipulation. Her son Sebastian is spoiled and cruel, enjoying the privileges of leadership without earning them. The Commonwealth has a clear divide between elites who live in luxury and workers who struggle, a recreation of societal inequality in the apocalypse. News of the Commonwealth spreads to Alexandria. Rick's former communities debate whether to join, to merge with this larger society, or to maintain independence. Michonne, still in Alexandria, is hesitant. She's built a life keeping her children safe, and introducing them to a larger unknown community feels risky. But the promise of resources, safety, and a real future is tempting. More survivors travel to the Commonwealth, establishing relations. Daryl, Carol, and others scout the community, evaluating whether it's trustworthy. They discover both positives and negatives: excellent medical care, stable food supplies, and relative safety, but also corruption, abuse of power, and citizens living in fear of authority. Connie and Kelly, two sisters who are survivors, become journalists within the Commonwealth, investigating injustices and trying to shine light on corruption. Their work reveals that Governor Milton has been keeping most citizens in the dark about the true state of the world, hoarding resources, and maintaining power through propaganda. Yumiko discovers her brother is living in the Commonwealth as a lawyer and part of the elite class. Their reunion is complicated by their vastly different circumstances and perspectives on the Commonwealth's structure. Yumiko begins working within the legal system, trying to reform it from within, while others push for more radical change. Ezekiel requires surgery for a tumor, and only the Commonwealth has the medical facilities to help him. This dependence on the Commonwealth's resources demonstrates how much power they have over other communities. Ezekiel's treatment is denied initially based on his class status within the Commonwealth, revealing the cruel bureaucracy that governs the community. Tensions escalate when Sebastian, the governor's son, endangers people by forcing them to retrieve money from walker-infested areas to pay off his gambling debts. His recklessness gets people killed, but he faces no consequences due to his privileged position. This injustice pushes many to question the Commonwealth's leadership. Lance Hornsby, the Commonwealth's ambitious deputy governor, tries to expand their territory by incorporating nearby communities forcefully. He uses military power and political manipulation to bring settlements under Commonwealth control. His actions are colonial in nature, conquering rather than cooperating, and it puts him in conflict with communities that value independence. The situation reaches a breaking point when Lance's actions result in deaths and destruction. A resistance movement forms within the Commonwealth. Ordinary citizens tired of inequality and abuse. They're inspired by stories of Rick Grimes's communities, where leadership was earned, resources were shared, and everyone had value regardless of their pre-apocalypse status. Pamela Milton's government becomes increasingly authoritarian in response to resistance. Protests are violently suppressed. Dissenters are imprisoned. The Commonwealth military is used to enforce control rather than protect citizens. The community that seemed like salvation is revealed to be a gilded cage. Revolution and hope. The Commonwealth faces internal revolution. Citizens take to the streets demanding change, equality, and fair treatment. They're inspired by Connie's journalism, by stories of Rick's communities, and by their own exhaustion with inequality. The protests grow larger despite violent crackdowns by Commonwealth soldiers. Daryl, Carol, and others join the resistance, helping organize and protect protesters. They're trying to avoid bloodshed while forcing the government to change. It's a delicate balance, especially as Pamela Milton grows more desperate and authoritarian. Sebastian Milton, the governor's son, is killed by someone he forced into danger retrieving money. His death, while cathartic for many, gives Pamela justification to crack down harder. She blames the resistance for her son's death, declares martial law, and orders mass arrests. A massive Walker herd, attracted by the noise of protests and conflict, threatens the Commonwealth. The walls are breached in several locations, and walkers pour into the community. Instead of uniting against this threat, Pamela tries to use it to her advantage, directing walkers toward areas where protesters are gathered, attempting to eliminate dissent through genocide. This betrayal galvanizes everyone. Commonwealth soldiers, tired of following immoral orders, join the resistance. Citizens fight alongside the protesters to clear walkers and save their community. The revolution succeeds not through violence, but through unity in the face of death. Pamela Milton is arrested and imprisoned, facing justice for her crimes. The Commonwealth begins restructuring its government, establishing democratic systems, eliminating class hierarchy, and opening communication with other communities. It's painful, messy, and incomplete, but it's progress. The communities begin integrating. Alexandria's survivors move to the Commonwealth, bringing their knowledge and experience. The Commonwealth shares resources and technology. Different philosophies of survival blend and evolve. It's not perfect, but it's hopeful. Judith and RJ grow up in this new world. They attend school, make friends, and live relatively normal lives despite the ever-present walkers outside the walls. They represent the future, a generation that will carry forward the lessons learned, but might not be defined entirely by trauma and loss. Daryl, after years of loyalty to Rick's memory, finally begins to move forward with his own life. He forms relationships, finds purpose beyond survival, and starts building rather than just fighting. Carol finds peace after years of darkness, reconnecting with Ezekiel and finding contentment in teaching the next generation. Michonne, who has spent years protecting her children, finally relaxes her guard. She allows herself to hope again, to believe that the world might actually be getting better. She keeps Rick's memory alive, telling their children stories about their father, about the man who sacrificed everything for a vision of cooperation and peace. Maggie and Negan reach a complicated peace. She will never forgive him for killing Glenn, and he will always carry that guilt. But they learn to coexist, to work together for the community's benefit. It's not reconciliation, but it's functional, and in this world, that's enough. Reflections and Legacy. As we reach the end of this timeline, let's reflect on the journey. From that hospital room in Georgia where Rick Grimes first opened his eyes to a world gone mad, to these communities rebuilding civilization in the Commonwealth, it's been a story of survival, loss, adaptation, and hope. The Walking Dead isn't really about zombies or walkers or the undead. It's about people. It's about how we respond to crisis, how we maintain humanity when everything encourages us to abandon it. It's about the question Rick posed early on. We're the Walking Dead, meaning that every survivor is on borrowed time, that death is inevitable. But what matters is how we live in the time we have. Rick's communities were built on principles that evolved throughout the series. Initially, it was pure survival. Find food, avoid walkers, protect the group. But as time went on, it became about something larger. Rick believed that communities could work together, that cooperation was better than conquest, that preserving humanity meant more than just keeping people alive. That philosophy was tested repeatedly. The governor showed what happens when power corrupts, when a leader uses fear and violence to maintain control. Negan took it further, building an empire on subjugation. The Whisperers rejected civilization entirely, embracing a return to nature's brutality. The Commonwealth demonstrated that merely recreating the old world structures wasn't enough if those structures perpetuated inequality. Through all these challenges, Rick's core group evolved. They learned when to fight and when to show mercy. They discovered that survival requires both strength and compassion. They found that leadership means sacrifice, that tough decisions often have no right answers, and that the cost of peace is eternal vigilance. The series explored trauma deeply. Nearly every character carries scars, both physical and psychological. Carol transformed from abused housewife to efficient killer to someone seeking redemption. Daryl went from rough loner to loyal friend to someone capable of leadership. Michonne evolved from solitary warrior to Rick's partner, to protective mother to revolutionary leader. And then there are the losses. So many deaths, each one rippling through the group, changing trajectories, forcing survivors to adapt. Glenn's death broke something in Maggie, but also gave her strength to lead. Carl's death changed Rick's entire philosophy, pushing him toward peace rather than continued war. Beth's death reminded everyone that hope, while necessary, doesn't guarantee survival. The Walking Dead's timeline is a tapestry of these moments. The little victories, like finding cans of food, the major battles against hordes and hostile communities, the quiet conversations around campfires, the decisions made in desperation, the moral compromises, the acts of unexpected kindness. It's a story about humanity's resilience and fragility in equal measure. As the communities move forward into an uncertain future, they carry lessons from everyone who came before. They remember Rick's leadership, Dale's conscience, Herschel's wisdom, Glenn's optimism, Abraham's loyalty, Tyrese's strength, and Carl's hope for a better world. The dead are never truly gone. They live on in the survivors' actions, in the world being built, in the stories told to children who never knew the old world. The timeline continues beyond where we'll end this narrative. There are more threats, more challenges, more losses to come. But there's also growth, progress, and the possibility that humanity can rebuild something worth preserving. The Walking Dead, both the literal monsters outside the walls and the survivors walking the thin line between life and death, continue their journey. In the end, The Walking Dead is about finding reasons to keep going when everything seems hopeless. It's about the bonds formed in crisis, the love that survives a tragedy, the courage to protect strangers, the wisdom to forgive enemies, and the strength to keep building even when destruction seems inevitable. From Rick waking alone in that hospital to communities of thousands working together across territories, the story arc is one of expansion, both geographically and philosophically. What began as one man searching for his family became a tale of humanity's potential to overcome its worst instincts and build something better from ruins. The timeline is long, spanning over a decade of in-universe time. Seasons change, years pass, children grow up knowing only the apocalypse. But through it all, people persist. They adapt, they survive, they live. And in a world full of death, that's everything. Conclusion. As the sun sets on another day, in the Commonwealth, as families gather for meals and children play in yards protected by walls, as guards watch walker herds in the distance and farmers tend crops, life continues. It's not the life anyone planned for, not the world anyone wanted. But it's the world they have, and they're making it work. Somewhere, walker herds still roam. Somewhere, new threats are forming. Somewhere, people are struggling to survive, just like Rick's group did all those years ago. The world is still dangerous, still unforgiving. But it's also full of people fighting to preserve humanity, to protect their loved ones, to build something that will outlast them. This is the Walking Dead timeline. A story of endings and beginnings, of death and life, of despair and hope. It's the tale of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances and finding within themselves the strength to endure, the courage to fight, and the grace to forgive. From one deputy sheriff waking in a hospital to thousands of people working together to rebuild civilization. The journey has been long, brutal, and ultimately human. The Walking Dead, in all their forms, continue their eternal march. But so do the living, and that makes all the difference. Rest now. Dream of safer worlds, and remember that even in the darkest times, even when death surrounds us, even when hope seems lost, people find ways to survive, to love, to build, and to believe in better tomorrows. That's the legacy of The Walking Dead. That's the story that will help you drift to sleep, knowing that no matter what comes, humanity endures. Good night.